new stereophonic sound spectacular.
Hello there, and welcome to the exciting world of hip. This is a new departure in language instruction for English-speaking people who want to talk to and be understood by jazz musicians, hipsters, beatniks, juvenile delinquents, and the criminal fringe.
Bonjour madame, bonjour monsieur. Nous allons, grâce à ce disque créé spécialement pour vous, essayer de tirer ensemble le maximum de qualité sonore de votre chaîne haute fidélité.
Sit back, relax, and close your eyes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're getting some really cool stuff today, all about lounge music, as seen through the lens of a pretty influential figure, El Muñecón. And we're going to be pulling from excerpts of his autobiography, which detail both like his own personal journey in radio and his, I guess you could say, philosophy of sound, like how he views radio and its power.
Yeah, and it's interesting because right off the bat, like one of the first things he says in the book is, quote, "The radio is a stimulation of the imagination." And that idea, that statement, it kind of runs through like a golden thread throughout his whole philosophy, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's more than just a, like a catchy quote. It's like he's saying that radio, when it's stripped down to its essence, to pure audio, it kind of forces us to use our imaginations in a different way. We're not just passively taking in images. We're building these mental landscapes, almost like our own movies, just from the sounds that we're hearing.
Right, exactly. And that's where he gets kind of, I don't know, critical, I guess, of contemporary radio. He feels like it's strayed from its true path, trying to be too much like television. And in doing so, it's lost that key element of imagination. He even says that, like, showing the face of the person behind the microphone was like the, quote, worst error in radio, because it just leads to people judging them by their appearance instead of actually listening to what they're saying, which I thought was pretty interesting. Yeah,
it's like by adding visuals, you're actually limiting the listener's experience. Instead of letting them fill in the blanks with their own imagination, you're giving them a predefined image, which, I mean, it makes you think, right?
For sure. And this is where his critique of those standardized radio formats, like, you think about it, those morning shows, the news segments, everything's so tightly scheduled and predictable. He sees those formats as kind of like fast food for the ears. Convenient, but not really all that nourishing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So instead of those like prepackaged formats, what does he propose? Like, what's his vision for what radio should be?
Well, he really wants to see a radio landscape where DJs have the freedom to truly curate. They can take risks, they can respond to like the energy of the moment, create these unique sonic journeys for their listeners, not just follow a script.
So it's almost like a return to radio's roots, this raw, unfiltered power of sound to transport us. But how did he come to these strong opinions? I guess we need to go back to his early days to understand that, right?
Exactly. His journey starts back in the 1960s when AM radio was king. And it was during this time that his musical sensibilities were really taking shape. He talks about being captivated by this show called Chocolo Twist on RACK 101 in Mexico City.
And what was so special about this show? What was it all about?
Well, it's kind of like a time capsule. They would play all these tracks from the 50s and 60s, exposing a young El Muñecón to the music that would eventually spark his lifelong love for that vintage sound.
Oh, wow. Almost like Destiny calling or something, right?
Yeah, you could say that.
And this fascination with all things retro, it only deepened when he ends up in Europe in the late 1980s. And that's where he stumbles upon this emerging acid jazz scene, which, a lot of people see that as a precursor to the lounge movement. Can you break down acid jazz for us a bit?
Yeah, so picture this. Jazz harmonies and grooves mixed with funk, soul, and even some electronic elements. It's got this cool laid-back vibe, perfect for, just chilling or setting the mood for like a sophisticated get-together. Definitely not your grandpa's jazz, that's for sure.
Gotcha. And while we're on the topic of musical influences, we can't forget the Italian record label, Irma La Deuce. They played a huge role in reviving music from the 60s and 70s, which provided this rich source of sounds for the budding lounge scene.
Absolutely. It's like all these different experiences, the radio show, the acid jazz, the resurgence of those vintage sounds. They were all kind of weaving together this tapestry that would ultimately shape El Muñecón's own unique contribution to radio.
Okay, so he's got this deep love for vintage sounds and a clear vision for what radio should be. So how does that actually translate into a career? Where does he go from here?
Well, his journey takes him back to his roots, to Mexico City, where he launches his very first radio show. And true to his passion, he fills the airwaves with this captivating blend of lounge and exotica music. He even mentions that La Tombola by Mona Bell was a huge hit with listeners, a perfect example of that vintage, playful vibe.
That's awesome. I bet it wasn't all smooth sailing, though, right? I mean, he was pushing a genre that wasn't exactly mainstream at the time.
Yeah, you're right. He worked at a few different stations, definitely faced some challenges along the way. Sometimes it felt like he was swimming against the current. But his dedication to lounge, his belief in its power, never wavered.
And this unwavering belief ultimately leads him to a pretty pivotal moment in his career, his move to Montreal.
Right. This is where things really start to take off. He gets a gig at Mix 96 and launches the Lounge King Show, a name that I think perfectly captures his persona and the whole vibe he's cultivating. And it's through the show that he gains international recognition, bringing his unique style of radio beyond borders.
So the Lounge King is officially born. But wait, there's more, right? He starts another show focused on some slightly different genres. Is that right?
He does. Always the innovator. He creates Atmosphere 69, which dives into the world of chill out and what he calls retro spatial music, a term he actually coined himself, which I think says a lot about his desire to define and categorize this unique soundscape.
Retro spatial. I like that. Can you unpack that a bit for us? What exactly does that sound like?
Think of it as music that evokes like a futuristic nostalgia, like a soundtrack for cruising through space, but with that distinct vintage flavor. Right. You know, swirling synths, echoing guitars, a touch of cosmic ambience, very cool stuff. And he was very adamant about chill out and retrospatial being seen as separate genres, not just lumped together as background music.
It's interesting how passionate he is about those subtle distinctions between genres.
Yeah, it highlights his deep understanding of music and his commitment to creating a specific listening experience. He wasn't just playing tunes, you know? He was curating a mood, an atmosphere.
Creating a whole sonic world that you can just step into and get lost in.
Exactly. And his influence goes beyond just the radio booth. He also curates music compilations like The Future Sound of Montreal and The Now Sound of Mexico, showcasing his knack for spotting new trends and really shaping musical tastes.
Wow. So he's not just a DJ, he's a tastemaker, a curator, a champion for this sonic experience.
Yeah.
But to really grasp his impact, we need to go deeper into the world of lounge music itself, right?
For sure, because for El Muñecón, lounge is way more than just a genre. It's a whole state of mind. It's about creating an atmosphere of pleasure, comfort, elegance, a sonic escape from the everyday. You know, a way to transport yourself to a more stylish and sophisticated realm.
Oh, yeah, that's a really intriguing concept. But I think to understand it fully, we need to go back to the roots of lounge music itself. Where does it all begin? How does it connect to this idea of a state of mind? Let's explore that in the next part of our deep dive.
So we've followed El Muñecón's journey from, you know, vintage radio enthusiast to the Lounge King himself, and we even touched on that retrospatial sound he loves. But to really get him, I think we got to rewind even further, back to the very beginnings of lounge.
Okay, rewind it is. Set the scene for us. When and where does this whole lounge thing start?
All right, so picture the 1950s. The world's recovering from a war. There's this new sense of optimism, prosperity, especially America. Suburban life is booming, and with it comes this fascination with leisure and sophisticated enjoyment, you know.
Yeah, it's the era of cocktail parties, the Rat Pack, madmen in their suits. I'm starting to get the picture.
Exactly. And lounge music kind of becomes the soundtrack to this lifestyle. It's all about creating an atmosphere of cool sophistication.
So it's more than just background music. It's setting a mood. A vibe.
Precisely. And this is where the whole bachelor pad aesthetic comes in.
Right.
You know, sleek furniture, mood lighting, and of course, a top-notch hi-fi system to fill the room with those lush, evocative sounds.
I can picture it now. A dimly lit room, maybe a fireplace going.
Yeah.
And the sounds of, say, Martin Denny wafting through the air.
Mm-hmm.
Am I on the right track?
You got it. Martin Denny is like a prime example of the exotica subgenre, one of the pillars of early lounge. He was known for these incredibly lush arrangements that incorporate sounds of nature, like bird calls, tropical drums, all blended with those jazzy melodies and Polynesian influences.
It's like escapism through sound, isn't it? Being transported to some faraway island paradise.
Exactly. And then alongside exotica, you have jet set pop, which really captures that whole world of glamorous international travel. Think Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, those catchy trumpet melodies, or Sergio Mendes' Brazilian-infused grooves. Makes you want to book a flight, doesn't it?
It does. And then you have space-age pop, which I'm guessing ties into that post-war fascination with space exploration in the future.
You nailed it. All about futuristic sounds and themes. Juan Garcia Esquivel was a pioneer in this genre, known for his innovative use of stereo effects and unusual instrumentation. Then you have groups like Ferrante and Teicher with those sweeping cinematic arrangements, often featuring those iconic Hammond organs. Very cool.
So we got escapism, glamour, futuristic dreams. Is there any room for humor in this lounge world?
Oh, absolutely. That's where kitsch comes in. This is where things get a little tongue-in-cheek with artists like Mrs. Miller. She was known for her, let's say, unique interpretations of popular songs, so bad it's good kind of music, often featuring those prominent organ melodies that were so big in the 60s.
It sounds like there's so much to explore within this lounge universe. And we haven't even talked about the revival that happened in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right. That's a whole other chapter. But before we jump into that, I think it's important to circle back to El Muñecón and his philosophy of radio. Because for him, lounge is more than just the music. It's about what that music represents, a way of life, an attitude, an appreciation for the finer things.
Right. He's not just a DJ. He's a curator of this whole aesthetic. But let's get specific. What makes his approach to radio so unique?
It all comes back to that idea of radio as a stimulation of the imagination, right? He truly believes that radio, in its purest form, should be an audio-only experience. He sees the addition of visuals as a distraction, a way of limiting the listener's imagination.
So it's about giving the listener that space to create their own mental images, their own interpretations of what they're hearing.
Exactly. He argues that in today's world, we're constantly bombarded with images. We're so used to being, I guess you could say, spoon-fed visual information that we've lost touch with the power of our own imaginations.
It's like we've become passive consumers of media instead of actively engaging with it and shaping our own experiences.
And El Muñecón wants us to break free from that passive state. He wants us to reclaim that sense of agency, that ability to conjure up our own worlds through the power of sound.
It's a pretty radical idea, especially in a world that's so visually dominated.
It is. And he even goes further by criticizing the way radio has tried to imitate television.
Yeah.
With, personalities becoming as important as the music they play. He sees this focus on the DJ's persona as a betrayal of radio's true essence.
Like he's saying, just let the music speak for itself.
Exactly. He wants us to focus on the sounds, the textures, the emotions that music evokes. He believes that every listener brings their own unique set of experiences and perspectives to the radio, creating a totally individual interpretation of the sounds they hear.
So it's a shared experience, but it's also intensely personal at the same time.
Precisely. And this ties into his belief that radio can be a powerful tool for self-discovery. By stripping away the visuals, by letting our imaginations run wild, we can tap into a deeper level of awareness, both of ourselves and the world around us.
That's a fascinating concept. But it also brings up an important question. In a world that's saturated with visual stimuli, how do we rediscover that magic of radio? How do we learn to listen in a way that truly engages our imaginations?
That's a great question. And I think El Muñecón offers some clues in his own approach to broadcasting. He talks about how he used to program music on the fly, responding to the energy of the moment and creating this spontaneous flow that listeners could really feel. It's a stark contrast to today's heavily formatted radio stations where everything's planned out, and there's very little room for improvisation.
So it's about breaking free from those rigid structures and tapping into a more intuitive, organic way of connecting with the music and with the listener.
Exactly. He also emphasizes the importance of authenticity and passion. He even tells a story about seeing a radio host unenthusiastically promoting a product that they obviously didn't understand or care about. And he argues that this is a symptom of a bigger problem, a disconnect between the people making radio and the content they're presenting. It's like the soul has been sucked out of the medium.
Yeah, he's lamenting that loss of connection, that sense of genuine passion and enthusiasm that should be like at the heart of radio.
Exactly. And this brings us back to his critique of the commercialization of radio. He's not saying that radio can't be a business, but he believes that it can be both. Commercially successful and creatively fulfilling.
It's all about finding that balance, right, between the business and the art.
Absolutely. And he points to his own career as proof that it's possible. He managed to carve out a niche for himself by staying true to his vision and his passion for lounge. He didn't chase trends or try to please everyone. He created a unique sonic experience that resonated with a specific audience, and that's what made him successful.
So he's kind of a rebel going against the grain, proving that there's still a place for this kind of radio. this kind of deep listening experience.
Absolutely. And his legacy goes beyond just the music he played or the shows he hosted. He's a true visionary who challenges us to rethink the way we experience radio, the way we listen, the way we engage our imaginations.
He's reminding us that it's not just about the sound itself. It's about what that sound evokes within us, the stories we create in our minds, the emotions we feel, the connections we forge through shared listening.
He even goes so far as to say that the humanity of radio has been lost. You know, it's no longer a truly shared experience because we've become so fragmented in our listening habits.
Everyone's plugged into their own individual playlists, their own curated sonic worlds.
And he challenges us to find ways to reconnect, to create spaces where we can listen together and experience that collective power of sound. It's a pretty radical idea in this age of individualized playlists and on-demand streaming, but it's a challenge worth considering, don't you think?
I definitely think so. But how do we even begin to bridge that gap? How do we move from this individualized listening experience back to a more communal, shared one?
Yeah, it's a tall order for sure. I mean,
Okay.
we're so used to having all the music in the world at our fingertips, tailored to our every mood. It's easy to forget that listening can be, a shared experience, something that brings people together.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't think it's impossible. Maybe it starts with small steps, Instead of always having our headphones in, maybe we put on a record and invite some friends over to listen.
Like an old school listening party.
Exactly. Or maybe we seek out places where that communal listening is already happening, like concerts, DJ sets, even just hanging out at a record store with other music lovers. It's about being intentional about creating those opportunities for connection.
So it's about being more mindful with our listening habits, not just treating music as background noise, but really making it a focal point. Right. And El Muñecón reminds us that this kind of focused listening can be like a form of meditation. By really tuning into the subtle nuances of sound, we quiet the mental chatter and connect with something deeper.
It's like hitting pause on that constant stream of information that's always coming at us.
Exactly. And by giving ourselves that space to just listen, we might be surprised by what we find about the music, about ourselves, about the world around us.
That's powerful stuff. So where do we go from here? How do we take El Muñecón's philosophy and apply it to our own lives? Even if we're not, lounge fanatics.
Well, I think it starts with cultivating a deeper awareness of sound in general. Instead of passively listening to music, try to actively engage with it. Notice the instruments, the way the melody flows, the emotions it evokes.
And it's not just music, right? It's about paying attention to the soundscapes of our everyday lives.
Absolutely. Tune into the sounds of nature, the wind, the birds, the waves, even the subtle rhythms of the city, the traffic, the voices, These sounds are all around us, but we often just tune them out.
Yeah, it's like we've become, desensitized to the richness of our sonic environment.
Right. And by consciously tuning into these sounds, we can rediscover a sense of wonder and appreciation for the world around us. It's about expanding our sonic palette, so to speak.
So it's not just about listening to lounge music. It's about cultivating a lounge state of mind, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I like that. It's about approaching the world with curiosity, playfulness, an appreciation for the beauty of sound in all its forms.
Finding those moments of sonic joy, whether it's through a vintage record, a live concert, or just the sounds of nature.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe El Muñecón's story will inspire some of you listening to create your own unique sonic experiences. After all, like he said, the radio is a stimulation of the imagination. And that imagination has the power to change the world around us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm going to leave you with a challenge. The next time you listen to music, really listen. Put away your phone, close your laptop. Just let the sound wash over you and see where it takes you. You might be surprised by what you discover.